All right, Mopar people, welcome back to the channel. I'm Justmoparjoe. A little tired today. You probably saw this in my other Roadrunner video in part 1 about how it needs a lot of love. So I've made kind of a basic plan I wanted to share with you. Things I want to do in the process of doing the other things. I know that makes sense. I've got to test fit these floor pans before I cut out my trunk extensions, assuming that these are placed correctly, which I think they are because they look like they were originally welded in there on both sides. So I'll need to break that loose at some point, but these are going to come out. But before I take those out, I went ahead and just measured from them, made some reference points on my sheet of paper here, some post-it notes. And my big pans, A and D, I'm going to lay them in one at a time. I've got a center mark here for kind of where the center of the pans would go. And I'm not sure if they're going to have an overlap yet or not, or any of that. The deal with this, and what's going to be tricky, since the wheel wells, the tub is widened that much, I'm going to have to trim a certain amount off each side. And I can't just throw the thing in here, butt it up, because then I'm going to also have that same amount. This, I don't know what it is, I'll measure it at some point. I would have that difference between the pan itself and the extension all the way down. So I could cheat and just weld that in here, but my gaps out here would be weird, and the hole placement and stuff like that. The pans are made to fit on a certain spot of the frame, so they'll lay, and then you do your welds. Simple stuff. You've seen it on a bunch of people's channel, but a lot of people didn't have to contend with this sort of stuff. I know when I'm getting closer to having those done, I'm going to weld at least a nice flat piece of metal here and hook these back up. These are just floating out in Never Never Land right now. And it's good that they left them there, but I want to get my trunk lid on again to where it'll shut, open and close, just to be sure these aren't moving whenever this pulls down. You see it has a little bit of flex to it, but for the most part it cycles in a certain region. So all that's lovely. So I'll strengthen those back up. But my mission for the day, get the floor pans or trunk pans fitted in, maybe trim them up a little bit, and if I can, I'll get these extensions taken out today after those are trimmed up, because remember, this is my reference, so you can kind of see that. We'll just say that tab there, it exists on both sides. It's nice. There's not one on here, but the lip itself is here. So let's just lay one in and see what it's about. So the process is, I don't think is that difficult. I got old Stanley. I'll measure from that lip edge where it's rolled down to the edge of the brake here for this trunk latch, whatever you call that. Like right at 27. So if I just take it here and measure, well look, they give me 27 and 5/8. So right now, if this was in place, this would be about 5/8 of an inch past this. So all that means is, there we go. So we have 27 and 27 5/8. Just like that. And that would put us, this would be about 27 There we go. This is just for reference, folks. Don't get scared about it. So there's 5/8. That's about where this line would end up. If I measure the distance here, about 5 inches. There we go. If I'm about the same, see my mark, see 5 inches. So right now I know this needs to move over 5 inches. It's that easy back here. So 5 inches over for that. I think what I'll need to do is probably bust this loose so this can lay down under it. And then this will pull back down later and I can weld it. All this stuff's been, I think all this stuff's been broken loose before. I'm not sure if the actual tail panel has, if they took it all the way off when they did their quarters, if you'll remember these little booger welds or what, or did they just pull it and peel it back somehow? I mean, this looks pretty factory through here and stuff like that, but I don't see a seam for the quarter panel, so maybe they did something better there, or these quarters came off a different car or something. I don't really know. But what I do know, this floor pan's got to move over. So I'm going to get to marking and measuring that. You see our goofy lip here that's bent kind of up there. I might have to go ahead and bend that back down nice and flat because this wraps over it. And I'd like to, if I can, make this pretty lip here match up again to this and cover up or butt weld to some of this ugly here. Make my life easier. So let's try that and see where it gets us to. A little bit. Some guys like to take them all the way off. I might, I don't know. But for now, I got it ground loose here. You see I had just little tiny holes. So if you look around that side, it's covered up by the bumper, but it's going to get welded in later anyway and refinished on both sides. So all good. I got to get this piece of metal out. I just stuck my little chisel under it. Those are like factory style welds, 1, 2, and 3. I'll get my cutter out and cut those, and that little piece will come off. But the new pan's actually wrapped there, and I didn't need this one on top of them to have it kind of jacked up there in the middle. I think it'll be a cleaner job of having it to where it lays down and lays down in the 2-piece fashion. Left side pan is fitting in real nicely. I got it clamped on the bottom side here. My trunk extensions, the new ones, are here. They are in. And you can see I've trimmed that lip off of here. It's currently overlapping this dude, which is fine. I'm going to do a little more trimming. But because of this giant chunk of metal here, everything is going to be slightly modified. It's just kind of the way it is. And that's fine. I don't really have an issue with that because it's a custom rig back here, and unless we were replacing everything and taking these out, then it's all a modification. You can see my sheet of paper through here, and I've got some nice flat metal. I believe it's 18 gauge. This beautifully brand new, and pretty nice stuff. I could use cardboard here, and I thought about it. But in my situation, I like this because I can see the daylight and exactly what the shape of the patch is going to be. And you can see kind of this brightened area here. I just took my thumb and rubbed and made a nice imprint on that line. And my plan is this piece that's sticking above, that's about a 1/2 inch. So that'll give me places I can plug weld. So I'll drill my holes into this sheet of metal here after I trim it. And then I can plug about every 1.5 inches or so, every inch. And all that welded stuff will be on the inside and be basically out of sight. So I do my plug welds, I can come back by with my flap disc, grind that off. All you'll see on the inside is a sheet of metal hanging down here where the paper is. Imagine that's metal. you'll see that sheet of metal, and you will basically see an overhang of this. So I can come back by and grind there. If I want to put a little seam sealer through, I can. And it will also be plug weld on the bottom, so I can do my seam sealer through there. Just kind of give it a more, little cleaner look. On this piece, I'm still kind of figuring it out. It's probably going to get trimmed. I can trim both pieces at once if I put a few more screws in, and then I can either seam it, which by seam it I mean butt weld it, or I could do plug welds in it if I needed to. I'm not, you know, like I said, we already realize this will never be perfect unless all the panels in the car are replaced. And that's not the goal of this. So we're going to make it nice with what's here, and we're going to add our new metal to it and keep pushing on. So let me get that piece trimmed. I'll be back. She transitions well. Goes down to the bottom on the other side. I'll show you that in a minute. I threw a couple self-tappers in here because I still have to cut both these, as I previously mentioned. And I got my other piece of metal inside of there. You can see it rolling. This blackness is from, I guess, when they plasma cut something before, or maybe they used the old cutting torch. It's been that long ago before a plasma cutter existed. I don't know. I just used a flat disc and kind of trimmed off some of the ugly. You can still see there's some there. But what I'm planning on is pop this dude out, and we'll go ahead and get our cut made. Right now, I'm fairly certain and confident with the way all this is set up. I don't have my welder here today, but what I can do is actually get to fitting this other side so that I can be sure everything's centered and happy. You'll see this big bolt with this shock rubber here. It actually kind of necks down to a smaller hole like this size, but that's just a perfect deal. And the opposite side of that long bolt is right there to the frame rail. So it pretty well centers it. You can see the holes hanging off one side, but it pulls that nice and tight basically all the way up through there. I didn't have to drill a bunch of holes and do all that stuff yet. This'll pull on down and get welded in the back. I got to roll that back piece over. As far as I know, I'm not having to take off the tail panel. The trunk extension stuff's coming next. You can see AMD's pretty well on top of all their stuff. I had to cut the big ugly off that well there. Show you that. There was nothing about that worth saving, and I tried to keep it pretty tight on there so it wouldn't just be a giant piece of metal to add back. But these are clamped up nice under here, and if you'll recall, I do have the new extensions to put in. I probably said that 10 times. I gotta flatten some of that out some more, but luckily for me, it allowed this to go ahead and pull in. You can kind of see how much of that factory stuff that they opened up here. It's amazing. That big piece of metal, whatever that thickness is probably about what you'll see here. I want this side, once it's done and cut, to pretty well match that side. And of course, I'm still going to trim that lip. But if they're all layered in the same, then when you pop the trunk, you'll kind of have symmetry, just because you already see the big bands are welded in the same. And I'm just trying to kind of match the architecture that's here. So I think I might actually have to, I'm waiting on an answer from Dave Swearinger. He's the man that does this all the time, to see if I need to put that right side underneath the left side. It looks to me like this is a little bit thinner lip, so I may go ahead and slide it under and see how she fits anyway, but I can do that before permanently putting these things in. So when he gets back to me, I'll let you know what he says. I can mark this now, or I can pull it out, mark it, and cut it, but that stuff's got to be cut just like that side, so we can get them all the same. Before I pop these out, I got under and scored everywhere along my frame rails that I would need to drill my holes to do my welds with. So all that's lovely. You can kind of see a little score mark there. Nice and tight. Up through here. Both these out. Take my body saw and trim both pieces of metal so it'll give me a nice place to butt weld to. I'm not scared to show you this at all. I'll have to add me a little piece of metal there later. But as far as our line goes, that bottom's a little rough. I'll get it squeezed in, but over 80% of this panel, you can ignore my crooked cut, lines right up. So I just go by welding, bending, clamping, until it's all the way sewn up. I'm not going to weld it today. That factory crease right there, how it lines back up. The majority of this is really, really nice. There we go. Boom. See where our screws line up. So as I weld, I'll be able to clamp along. But yeah, pretty pleased with that. I may stick these back in here shortly just to finish mocking up, but overall she's there. I need to get my holes drilled here. Boom, 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 boom. You can see the outline of the frame rails. So it would go like holes, holes, like that. And there's a brace running through here. No biggie. Weld them up through here. Shock tower. I call it a shock tower. It's probably called a shock cross brace or something. Let me see if we can, if it touches the pan at all, we'll weld to it, but I don't think it actually does. It may float, hover above it just barely, like through here. See that notch there? So we find the flats, we can weld them in, but the good part about this one is that that seam, if you see the one side where I marked, my seam is actually going to be covered from the bottom side by that frame rail on a lot of that. So nice. It's time to hang the extensions in, and as you can see, there's 10 layers of rust under there. I don't think this is actually attached. I'm gonna find a little pry bar or something to go through, and you can watch me for that, do that for a little while. But along the bottom, I think it's basically free. There's a little booger of a weld there where they bent that piece over. And we'll see what kind of sins are hidden on the other side of this. So here we go. I got a little grind on these two little dudes. Oh yeah, that one's free. Didn't take much there. You can see that. I think the more proper way of doing this is to take your plasma cutter or whatever and cut all the edges. May not have to up here, but you know what I mean. Cut up close, take the big rusty raggedy panel out, then get to up close to your spot weld. I happen to have a plasma cutter and I may just do that, but I don't know at what time the rest of this car is getting painted. So I didn't want to gouge up or mess up the outside of this quarter if it's possible. Yeah, I think they may have skinned over another quarter in the past and just left the left that for moral support. Yep. Rocks and all kinds of goodness. Here. Maybe it was. All right. So metal doesn't break typically. Let me show you. So metal doesn't typically break if it has been welded. But this one, piece of quarter, looks like it just got butted up and smeared with some filler on it, right straight through here. Let me get you, there we go. Yeah. So it makes my life a little easier and more difficult at the same time. Here's the original quarter. Here is the scabbed on quarter. And here is the trunk extension that I need to separate from the original quarter. Wonderful. There's my first little cut. If I stick my hand from the bottom side, I can feel that's where the lip goes. So once I cut that, I can get underneath it and find those spot welds and all that. But man, that's so fast and easy. So that's loose. I need to cut this piece here. Most of this stuff looks rotted anyway. So what I'll probably have to do is scab a panel onto here, to this outer wheelhouse, to have anything to weld to. So if I can, I may try to save that piece just for alignment. I like that idea, but I mean, it's gonna line up the way it lines up. Let me cut this one from the inside downward and show you what that looks like. See? Oh, so easy. Now we're cooking. Yes, sir. And I think what I'm gonna end up needing to do is trim a little more tensions out. I can get to my little stuff here if I want to keep it or lose it or whatever. It's kind of rusty, but here's their new quarter skin, I think, over the top of the old one. So this was like factory undercoating. I guess that's what was throwing me. I kept seeing this green, you know, and this to me looks like factory undercoating, but it had new quarters. It's got new quarters. Well, they're not new anymore, but you see what I mean. So I got to get in, dig out this stuff, disconnect it to where my new one can slide and slide. But that plasma cutter sure helped out a lot. And the bottom of this, I'm surprised. It's actual metal right there, so that's nice. I'll have to study on getting this cancer out without figuring out what's on the other side of that and not cutting through, because I hate to just drop an extension in and leave this nastiness behind there, because eventually it's going to be rusting between that panel and that panel if it's not already. Well, isn't that just lovely? The bottom kind of paid off for me. Since it was not connected to anything before, it just kind of rolls under and it's still not connected to anything, but I'm going to place the top parts first. This thing's got to pull down. My piece here, I went ahead, remember it was split, I just cut another inch off and the thing popped off, so I could free the metal from it and clean up all my edges on that. So she's gonna slide back in there. I don't know if I can get it to stay or not, but I can get that welded in before I start welding my other pieces, because you see it's like the ankle bone connects to the knee bone, and knee bone connects to the other bone. But man, this sucker's real ragged here. You can see the amount of filler I ground off of it. There's some more peeling stuff, but that's rusty. So the best thing would be to go ahead and cut and remake that piece if it can be done, and then reconnect into what seems to be a pretty solid quarter skin, albeit not installed too well, but she's sturdy. This other side, you can see my little rusty holes through here, and we are connecting about right along, let me get you there, about right along that line. So the main rust there, this might end up being solid enough that I can just grind or wire wheel that off, find my spot welds and drill them to get that section. It'll connect a little bit like right there, see that? So if I can pry that apart, that'll be good. This is not doing anything. It needs to be reshaped and formed, or at least a new patch of metal here, welded, blah blah. And back here looks, I think, slightly better, which, you know, the other side tricked me too. Looks good here. Looks pretty terrible in here. I don't know what that's stuffed full of. Old mud or something maybe. So I think I'll start with my plasma and cut these little boom boom booms. I'm going to try to use it as much as I can, because man, it's so quick and nice. I see why the old Bondo William uses it. Nifty. Let's knock that apart. Look at here. Oh yeah, we better keep that. Real solid. And I have to get my chisel. I didn't do enough cutting there. It may just pop apart with a chisel and a little light hammer work. And I'll need to cut through there and downward. Like I said, there's nothing on this side to actually save, so should be able to get on down with it. And just like magic, this side's out too. I actually got lucky over here and got my spot weld cutter, drilled those two, pop pop. They went great. This top part was just basically what you call it, brazed in one spot, and had the well, here it is, all fit in place. My drop downs look pretty good. I just got everything clamped. I'm not welding anything today. I'll have to call it. You can see that my gap there lines up atop that frame rail. So once I get that welded in, you won't be able to see the bottom seam. So I'm excited for that. And yeah, they line up pretty well. I know there's a gap there right now, but it's just because the stuff's laying in place. I want you to kind of see what's going to happen. I got to do a few little patches there and one little patch right there. And beyond that, this thing is sealed up nice. I got one screw in here. All that looks good. What I'm going to end up doing, the body has a sag to it right now. You can see kind of this tail light panel versus that. So I can lift. I'll just take my floor jack and a block of wood when it comes time before I shoot any screws into that, but I still got a little rust here I got to play with. You can see the catastrophe of the day. Glad those are gone. I got to clean this stuff up. It's nasty. But anyway, I appreciate y'all watching and following along with our green Roadrunner here. I don't know what we'll call this thing yet. Let me know in the comments what you think we should. And I'll catch you next time.